Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and today we get to welcome the incredible CJ Graham, Army veteran, actor, a very successful businessman. CJ, awesome to have you on here today.
Hey, thanks, John, for having me. I really appreciate it.
So before we hit record here, one of the things we were talking about, which is why I wanted to start off here, outside the convention idea of you meeting fans and all that stuff, which we'll talk about, you also run very successful business stuff like casinos and stuff like that. How has the last couple of years been, and how excited are you to see stuff start opening up again?
Well, I've been very fortunate as a result. Unfortunately for me, I was able to retire 5 years ago. So when the epidemic hit, unfortunately, I didn't have to deal with it. I would just call down to the local store and order my food and pick it up in the trunk of my car. I have a lot of associates that are still in the industry that really had to work through it. But I was fortunate. But I did deal with back in 2006 and 7 when we had the upside down housing market. We had to start letting people go and going by seniority and making some modifications to our payroll systems. But I was real fortunate. As you indicated, I ran 2 casino resorts as a chief operating officer, general manager. So I had, give or take, 2,500 employees at any given day. So I was fortunate in the industry. I did it for about 28 years.
One of the interesting things about you, and again, we will talk about how you got into that line of work, but with you starting, like, how did you get kind of from your childhood, your upbringing, to the military? Like, what inspired you to kind of jump into the Army lifestyle for those 4 years?
Yeah, I was a judge. I went in the military 48 years ago, so I'm a Vietnam era vet. I didn't have a father, unfortunately. I'm one of those people, but I stood up proud. I mean, he died when I was 3. So at about 17, I had some challenges, maybe some authoritative challenges, and I made a decision to go in the military, to the infantry, and never looked back. And it's been a foundation of stabilization for me, integrity, and leadership all those years.
It's one of those things too where I've had the pleasure of having Michael Bailey Smith on here, Rob Mello from the Happy Death Day series. And the interesting thing I've always found, the actors that have served in the military, whether it's Army, Marine Corps, whatever it is, there's something very distinct about you gentlemen. And it's kind of refreshing too, because I think in the industry of the entertainment world, the ideas of the stuff you talked about, like honor, integrity, and stuff like that, it stands out for those that actually served. And if you could kind of speak upon how important those type of virtues and stuff is important in your daily life, especially when you're working in the industry actively.
Yeah, I believe that if you're a good leader, you've done something in your background that's made you understand that you've worked at all the levels of the lower employment. I don't care if you've been a dishwasher, a valet, a dealer, or just a vice president, when you're walking around. I used to take and go into my teams every 3-4 months, put a wardrobe on, a uniform on, and I used to clean toilets. And I go down there and deal cards, and I go down there and walk security around and do valet. Just because I wanted them to know the equality that, yes, my paycheck is a different size. My headaches are bigger, so I have an investment in Advil. But at the same time, I'm just like them. And leadership is hard. It takes time and patience. Dictatorship is easy. Anybody can be a dick. So to me, get down there, shake some hands, and let them know who you are as a person and help advance their careers as much as you can.
You're kind of like undercover boss before undercover boss. I like that.
Yeah, I really do believe that if you don't know what's going on the floor, if you don't go down into the hotel rooms and talk to your maids and the people working, that that's nice. You're doing the job numerically. You're looking at the algorithms. You're looking at the statistics and the numbers. That's good. But are you leading? Are you asking that dishwasher what they want to do? Besides wash dishes? And when they tell you they want to get in to be a waiter or a waitress, then help them, get them over to the vice president of human resources and see what we can do to get them into bussing tables and learn how to take orders.
Is it interesting for you when you're in that role in front of people versus when, say, you're at a convention with fans? Like now you're on the other side of the service industry. Like, is that a weird change for you when you have to flip back and forth?
Fortunately, not for me, and I can't speak for others, but I understand both sides of the coin. You know, since I've been on that side of the coin, when I get to the conventions and I see the fans, and they ask me a question, and you know what? Maybe I've heard the question 1,000 times, maybe 2,000 times. However, for that person, it's the very first time they've asked the question, the very first time they've heard the answer. So I really enjoy talking to the fans. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you, John, if it wasn't for the fans. So again, kind of going back to remember where you came from and who got you here, and those fans, that fan base that's for the Friday the 13th series, that franchise has grown tremendously because of the fans.
Yes, and we are going to talk about that for sure. When after the military, the transition from the military life to back to civilian life, what was that like for you? And kind of was that as soon as you got the army, did you jump right into the nightclub scene from there?
Not exactly. When I was a sergeant when I got out of the infantry, we were very short-handed with E7s. So as a staff sergeant, first sergeant, you know, we didn't have those. They had all gotten out as NAM had come to an end. The conflict of Vietnam, you may recall, is from 1959 to 75. And as that campaign came to a close, a lot of those E6s and 7s, as soon as they got home, they got out. So I was a platoon sergeant with about 35-ish soldiers, four platoons. I learned a little bit about leadership beyond my pay grade. When I got out, though, true story, and I always laugh because my first job when I got out was, you know, those porta potties at the job sites, the ones that we used to tip over when we were
Yes.
kids. I used to deliver those, and I used to clean them and suck them out. And we had a saying because people would laugh, and I used to say, "Oh, you clean out shit toilets." Hey, hey, hey! Don't laugh because your shit was our bread and butter. So true stay, and that was my first job after I got out of the military, hauling those around. And then I migrated from there. Of course, I headed up into the gaming industry, and I decided after about 4 or 5 years in the gaming industry, I want to take a look at LA, Los Angeles.
That entrepreneurship of yours, is that something that you kind of helped the army help exacerbate like your feelings towards that? Like it seems like you've always had this idea, especially as you transgressed and got into the industry, that you wanted to be a leader and really push yourself. Is that something that the army instilled further into you, or something you really loved and wanted to go as high as you could in that world?
It gave me an opportunity to express it. When you go in, you're just a private E1, and you've got sergeants around you, and you've got corporals, and you kind of define who you are at that point. I want to be a leader because I think I can do as good a job, in some cases, maybe better. So my goal was to always to grow, and of course, there's always that opportunity for a higher paycheck. So getting through the military and coming out from starting as an E1 and getting out as a sergeant, that did give me inspiration that I wanted to grow up the ranks or whatever I did. Again, you know, I've always told my children, I don't care if they work at 7-Eleven, as long as they're happy and they can support their family, that's all I care about. Me, I really looked at it from a monetary perspective of what I wanted to do, and I put some of it equal level. You know, I've come with a high school diploma. I have an honorable discharge from the military, and I have a PhD in common sense. So I apply that
Yeah.
PhD every day.
As you at what I find very interesting is before we get the Jason Voorhees part, you were actually playing the character as kind of like this little character in this little nightclub area you were working at. As that is, I mean, how talk about? I mean, obviously, I'm a firm believer that you have to put yourself in position to be seen, and there is some luck when it comes to what we accomplish in life and who you know. But could you ever have imagined that two people from a film production company or whatever would see you doing that and be like, you know what, he could be the next Jason?
Yeah, you know, let's just jump after I did a little stint in the gaming industry in Reno. I went to LA, and I've always worked two jobs. I worked doing something in the daytime and 3 hours, 4 hours a night running as a nightclub as a bouncer, a doorman. And I always knew as a bouncer or doorman, that would make my car payment, my car insurance. And then my 40-hour week job would pay my bills. So that's how I looked at things and balanced my monetary need for the lifestyle I wanted. I ended up being the general manager of a nightclub, 18,000 square feet, good sized club. And we had a hypnotist on Thursday nights. And all of a sudden, he brought in a production company because he wanted to shoot his show to try to expand his horizon. The company that came in was called Real Effects, Reel, Real Effects. And I didn't know that they were the special effects people on part four, Friday the 13th, with Mr. Ted White. So they just made an
Yeah.
idea to the hypnotist about putting a Jason character in wardrobe and coming through the back of the screen where the subjects were on the stage. And they said, let's put CJ's big butt in it. You know, he's about the same size as Ted. And, you know, the rest is history. I mean that sometimes luck does prevail. However, once you get the job, you have to deliver, don't forget. And in this case, I think I was fortunate we delivered.
And I think the first Friday the 13th, I think obviously is iconic, and but it wasn't until the sixth one, Jason Lives, that you jumped in there, where I felt like that series really jumped to the point where it is today. Like it started the process of this iconic character, and the way it's almost like a zombie Jason, where it's very just how you portray all the movements and all that stuff. And what I love about it is you had really no experience acting before that, and you also had no experience doing the stunt work, like the underwater stuff and the fire stuff, and how you're able to pull that off as a first role for you is just it blows my mind.
Yeah, I've never done a stunt in my life or been on a movie set. It wasn't my dream. I had actually entertained LAPD or the Sheriff's Department when I went down there originally. To fall into it and to be fortunate enough, I did not know what an SAG, SAG Actors Guild card was.
Right.
They put me in wardrobe. I had to go down to Paramount Studios and meet Frank Mancuso Jr. a couple times. And of course, Tom McLaughlin, the writer, the director, and the stuntman. At the point where, you know, once I was given the film, they called me on a Friday. They decided originally, to be fair, to go with another gentleman who's a stuntman at the time. And they put one day where they had a daily, and it's still in the film actually. There's a scene where the paintballs hit the midsection. And most people just say, well, are you wearing padding? You're a little thicker. It was a different gentleman. He was a little thicker than I and just didn't portray what they were looking for. So he was released after that, and I was brought in to finish it. Doing the stunts, you know, I was pretty young, obviously. I'd only been on the military a few years, reasonably physical fit, obviously. And I didn't think anything of it. You know, when they put me on fire, I didn't think anything of it. When I was 20 feet underwater, breathing off a regulator, chained down to the bottom of an Olympic sized swimming pool at USC, I didn't think anything about it. Two things. Number one, they were paying me. So I was like, how much? Oh, yeah, I can do that. And secondarily, every time they want to do another take, they said, we have to pay you again. I said, really? Well, you do as many takes as you'd like. So it was fun going through walls, going through doors, getting shot, cables being hooked onto my back. You know, today, you know, in those days I could tuck and roll. Today, when I hit the ground, when I fall off my horse, I go thump. So I don't think it'd be as much fun right now.
When it came to the violence of that movie, did anything when you put that mask on for the first time, or when you were on screen, did the previous life in the army with any violence you saw, did that kind of seep through into that character, how you perceived Jason in terms of the violence?
Yeah, well, you know, I went ahead and took a look at part four and part three just to get a gauge. Tom McLaughlin was very clear. He was looking to portray a little differently. He was looking more for a launching platform after part five, that maybe part six would give it some life, some feet,
Yeah.
some wheels. So he was very clear what he was looking for. The cool thing for me is, you know, coming out of the military a few years before, I am 6'3", 250. Even today, I'm 6'3", 250. You learn to walk a little differently than most people because you're already oversized, you're big, and people do recognize you when you come in a room because you're big. Good, bad, or indifferent, it is what it is. You get used to that representation. So once I put the wardrobe on, the character just naturally comes to anybody, and I mean that. I don't care if you're 5'6", if you're 6'5". You put that wardrobe on, you put that mask on, and for those that are listening that have done it, it just naturally takes over. You become Jason. You stop talking. You just look at people. You tilt your head a little bit, and it's a character that anybody, once they put the mask on, they really do step into the role 100%.
We I had Tom Matthews on here last year and talking about the movie and stuff, and it's so cool. Like you, there's such a passion when it came to this movie, and it was really cool hearing him be like, "Oh man, CJ and the cast." Like when you guys see each other at these conventions, it must be really cool to kind of be like, "Man, like it's like how cool is it to see each other and be like." Man, we create something really cool that the horror fan base really seems to enjoy even more so today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when you do a film, and again, my first film, so I didn't really understand much of it. I was just doing my job, so to speak. Every time I got a mission, I finished it and went back to my trailer. Tom Matthews, being the expert he is, and Darcy and the other Tom,
Yeah.
everybody really, that was their world. They knew what they were doing in and out. The honor for me is that I was able to deliver a product of good perspective for them, so I didn't make them look bad. That makes me happy. However, what the cool part is, we're talking about this 3 decades later, and I have the honor of seeing Tom Matthews, Tom Finley. I get to
Yes.
see Darcy DeMoss, Tom McLaughlin, Alice Cooper, still today, and we all have very positive attitudes about it, and honored. I use that word, honored, that we did a product that people are still talking about it 3 decades later.
Is there a favorite kill of yours in that movie?
Of course, I love the sheriff. The reason I love
Yeah,
breaking the sheriff in half is two things. There's no blood, no guts, and you have to think about that.
there is.
The gore is imaginary, and everybody's imagination is a little different. But can you imagine breaking somebody's spine in half like that and just listen to the popping of the chicken bones? I just think that's nice.
Yeah, it was so good. And you mentioned the Alice Cooper thing too. And the single that was written for the movie, "He's Back," the man behind the mask. I've read that obviously, if you watch the music video, it's kind of spliced in with scenes from the movie and stuff. But you also filmed the new content, and so for you to get back in that character, was that something the studio's like, here's extra money to put the stuff back on? And because that, I assume that was filmed after the movie already came out.
Yes, and it's interesting. You got to remember 1986. MTV had only been out for a year or two. I think 84 it
Yeah.
came out. Don't hold me to that. 84, 85. So this is 1986. And don't forget, John, Top Gun was the number one movie in 1986. So, it's a different era than today. But I
Yes.
will tell you, every time you do something to that magnitude, they, unfortunately or fortunately for us, you do get paid. I'm in part seven in the prologue, the beginning, they flash back and forth and they get credits in part seven. And they do have to pay you for that usage of film clips from your movie.
So I was born in '85, and it wasn't. I didn't get to watch this movie till I'm gonna say '92, '93. But it was the first time I remember seeing. And it boggles my mind still because I didn't understand how the entertainment industry works. But it's the first time seeing a movie character intermingling with a singer in a band that I was familiar with my parents' cassette tapes and No More Mr. Nice Guy and Poison and all that stuff. And it was just a really cool thing that I wish more movies and stuff and television did that today, where that perfect juxtaposition of whether it's an iconic horror character and a metal band or whatever it is. I just thought it was so cool. And still to this day, to have Alice Cooper part like you and him together, it's just so rad.
And we do. 6 months ago, we did a convention together in wardrobe. I put full wardrobe on, and Alice Cooper was sitting on his throne, of course, and we were doing photos with the fans. It's true story, John. In 1973, I'm 65, just so you know, as you kind of alluded to when you said you were born that early, 85. Anyway, I'm 65 years old. So you got to remember, my first concert just happened to be Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare in Seattle,
Wow.
Washington, back in 1973 when I was 16. So I always was kind of amazed that, in 87-ish, 86, I get to go back and do work with Alice Cooper. And to this day, I still get to see the gentleman and get to do events with him and sign autographs with him. So to me, you just full circle. It's just kind of an honor.
When you put that mask back on, I know you sometimes you do that too for the conventions, which is awesome. I've seen you talk about almost basically getting movie replica or stuff that looks just like the character. When you put that costume on, does any part of you just? I mean, you kind of alluded to where you kind of become Jason, but is it tough to switch on and off at those conventions when you put that on because it's such a protected and classic iconic character that only so many people can say they played that character. For you to be probably one of the better versions of it, does it ever get kind of like what's your preparation putting that mask on the first time?
I've got about 20 minutes to get it on before I need to be out doing photos. So that's my preparation. Interesting enough, I'm not real, I don't take ownership of it where I'm real covered with it. I'm very proud every time a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 60-year-old goes by me in full wardrobe. and they do that. They try to challenge me because I'll be sitting there as I am right now talking to a fan, and they'll stand about 10 feet away and give me that look. And they're not going to say anything, but they're just going to try to stare me down from behind the mask. And I love it. You know what? Like I said, you put that mask on, character just drops. I had a 7-year-old come up to me this past weekend when I did an event, and no exaggeration, in wardrobe, wouldn't say a word, wanted an autograph. Mom had to tell me everything that had to be put on the mask, or excuse me, onto the photograph. Finally, I said, okay, well, can you take the mask off now so we can talk? And once he took the mask off, he started smiling and talking. He was all excited. But when he had that mask on,
It's awesome.
so
Just awesome. So the idea what I really love about this, you've kind of touched upon like the integrity and honesty. And I think it's something that's totally lacking in the entertainment industry. But your friendship with Kane Hodder, and I know there's a lot of I'm not gonna say drama because I've had Ken Kersinger on the show, and we talked about all this. But I love the fact that when it came time to Freddy vs. Jason, you were kind of offered the role, I guess, to play Jason again, but you said no out of your friendship to Kane. And I know you two are friends, and you guys are always playing jokes at each other. But I love that, reading that, seeing that in this industry, you could still value your friendship over a potential career move and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool.
yeah, I know both Ken, and Ken is a great guy. Don't take it wrong. He took the role, and if you didn't know this, one of the reasons that I was approached, I was called by management of, do you have an interest? And like I said, well, what's wrong with Kane? Why aren't you going to use Kane? And they didn't really have a solid answer, except they wanted a bigger Jason in so many words. And at the time, I was chief operating officer, general manager of one Thunder Valley Casino Resort up in Northern
Wow.
California. You got to realize, to quit a job of that magnitude and go do a film for 8 weeks, there's a big flag difference in payroll. And then I wouldn't be with the job. So one of the reasons was, of course, like I said earlier, I just used money as a reason to look to do something. But also, they were looking for a big guy. And once they said they weren't going to use Kane, the reason they used Ken, and I didn't know this, but I do know Ken well. We talked. They wanted somebody big, and I did a photo op with Ken, and he was huge. And I looked at him and said, "How big are you?" I said, "I thought you were 6'6". I'm 6'3". How can you be so big? Well, they also put Ken in a 2-inch platform to make him 6'8".
Oh,
Ken told me this personally, so I'm regurgitating right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I had no idea that they'd put him in a platform, and that's why he was so big. That was one of the things we were trying to do. Robert England, great guy. He's a normal sized human being, like Tom Cruise.
yeah.
5'8ish, 5'9". That's normal compared to somebody that's abstract like me or Ken. So that was one of the things. And again, at the same time, it was like, I enjoy what I'm doing. I've got my positions. I'm at the top of the mountain, so to speak, in my industry. Just wait until you're ready to retire. And like I said earlier, I have retired now 5 years ago. In that time, I've had the pleasure of doing a couple fan films, playing Elias Voorhees. I had the opportunity to do 13 Fanboy with Dee Wallace, Kane Hodder, Corey Feldman. And I have another opportunity coming up next week. I'll be doing a small film. I get to do some roles. And the nice thing about it now is it isn't about money. It's about fun. Now that I'm retired, I can do these things and I can contribute to the film and not have to think I got to make a car payment or I got to make my rent or whatever.
Right.
I can try to help somebody else be as successful as I think I've been over the years and play it forward.
One of the interesting, and I wish Highway to Hell became a series because your portrayal of Sergeant Bedlam as Hell Cop, like the fact you're a silent character there, you're badass. Like, how fun was to play that character, and how come that never came to be something bigger than it is? Because I think it's a cult classic.
It was ready for a national release at the theater chains. Hemdale was the name of the company. Unfortunately, Hemdale bankruptcy about a week before the release. And in doing so, it went right to the shelf. It didn't even go to the VHS. It went to the shelf, sat there until about 5 years ago when United Artists MGM bought the library. So now it's available on DVD. I had some folks come to me about, maybe 3 years ago from Germany and do an interview at my house. And then they had it done and redid it and put it with captions in German. And it's become extremely popular. I still today have some of the original posters that were supposed to be distributed to the
Oh
theater.
wow.
in the same box with Hemdale's name on it that they mailed me back in probably 1989, 1990. And they're black and white. They're full size posters for a theater, but they're black and white. For those of you who may not know, you know, Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's younger brother, is in it. And you may know somebody named Ben Stiller. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah.
$20 million actor. He has about 8 seconds, maybe 9 seconds in it. His mom and dad are in it. His sister's in it. Christy Swanson, the original Buffy and the Vampire, she's in it. So it does have a cast of characters.
It's such a interesting thing because again, you play a character that's silent, and your actions speak for you. But I just thought it was so surreal. Like at the time, I mean, it still is such an original idea. And again, like it's really cool. Like you put up him next to Jason or Sergeant Bedlam, and you kind of like, man, like you almost want to see a story between those two because your portrayal obviously is so believable in this hulking guy that's just unstoppable.
You know, and that's interesting you put it that way because the Jason and the Hal Cop squaring off, is one of those that would be an interesting film. It's almost like when I did Vengeance, squaring off with a gentleman named Jason Brooks who played Jason and me as the father. I mean, I grew a beard for 4 or 5 months. I had a long stringy wig on, and we're in the same size category, so it's me squaring off with myself, so to speak. 35 years ago.
I'm wondering during the height of this and when Jason Lives comes on, I think you're in the middle of you got all the Leprechauns, Child's Play, Hellraiser, everything going on at the time. Was there ever any active competition? Not vocally, like not I'm not talking like bad drama, but you kind of like, oh, how about they kill or my kill's better? Like I'm always curious, like when you guys are watching and other directors and franchises are like, we get up the game here. Did that ever happen during Jason Lives?
I'm going to say no from my perspective. I'm not aware of any, but if you go back, the movies were different back then, and I mean from the perspective they were considered a B movie. And you have to remember, in 1986, Top Gun, Tom Cruise. I'll give you an example. If I took a picture of Tom Cruise to India today, they've got about 1.4 billion people. I can assure you 90% of the people would say Tom Cruise. If you took a picture of CJ Graham, like I look at you right now, they kind of shrug their shoulders like whatever. However, if you turn it over to a picture of Jason Voorhees, they'd all say Jason, Friday the 13th. Nobody really was picking up on the horror movies at that time, Leprechaun, etc., as they have today. Today, people have really relaxed. It's a conversation piece when you get to the copy machine or when you're emailing somebody and you put a little hashtag and a machete and blood on it, a giggle, giggle. People have really relaxed with it. I've had full bird colonels from the United States Air Force come up and get an autograph for me. And I would ask her what she did. She goes, well, I'm a colonel in the Air Force. I said, what are you going to do with the photos? She goes, I'm going to put it behind me on my desk in my office. Now, can you imagine walking into a colonel's office and she's got a picture of Jason
Oh,
autograph behind her? I mean, what a conversation piece.
well, it's cool you're both veterans too, though. So maybe she could sell it that way to her brass.
Yeah.
Have you ever, whenever you go out, say with your family or whatever, do people recognize you today? And is it weird for you to they come up to you to be like, "Oh my God, you're Jason"?
It does happen, unfortunately or fortunately enough. My community, a few people have seen me and they remember. I go to a steakhouse downtown, uh, Texas Roadhouse. And I'll tell you, I've been there twice, 3 times, and every time I go in there, they seem to remember me. It's like before you know it, you've got a half a dozen waiters or waitresses want to get a picture with you while you're there, and they're really good about it if you don't mind. But at the same time, I've been to Universal Studios with my family when they were younger, and had somebody go, "Hey, you played Jason." I was at TSA one time in line, showing my ID coming through the airport in Atlanta, and the guy looked at my name and looked at me and goes, "You the guy to play Jason?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh man, I love Jason." I said, "Well, do you know who Derek Mears is?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "You see that guy back there in line? That's Derek. Derek, come up here, come up here." Brings him to the front of the line to put us through TSA. I mean, they know the name, but I am shocked how many people really look at you and go, "You played Jason." The horror fans know your face. They know the name, but a real horror fan knows exactly what you look like when you're walking around, and they'll see you, and they don't mind to bother you. The nice thing is you get to be incognito because of the hockey mask. You don't have to be in a position where you're unfortunately bothered all the time because not everybody knows who you are.
to kind of loop back to the military life, I know you were fortunate enough and you put the time in when it came to the nightclub and pushing yourself through that. But say there's a kid or a guy or girl get out now and they don't, they maybe they might not have the same opportunity as you do, but they want to get into, say, acting or work on movie sets or television sets. Is there programs that the military helps people put through, whether it's maybe like SkillBridge, Department of Defense, or something like that? Like, what programs are out there for your experiences, issues with the VA or anything like that that kind of help out there now?
I won't say for the VA specifically, but I can tell you that if you wanted to get a stunts, there are stunt schools, special effects, there are special effects schools, acting schools, drama schools. There are different productions you can get into. Most of your high schools have drama classes. And at the time when you're in high school, drama seems to be like, that's kind of lame, right? But there are folks that take that drama very seriously, and then they take it and turn it into a career in acting. I can almost assure you there are some people that took drama in school and they probably were a little bit ranked on because they were doing drama, and their paycheck is
Of
pretty heavy
course.
today. And others are going, gosh, I thought I was going to do so good in football, but I should have been in drama. So I don't know specific at VA, but what I always say it again, luck is involved in things too. So I got lucky. I was given a job, I delivered, I performed. To this day, I still have a due diligence to do things. When I'm speaking with little people, for instance, first thing I ask them is, what are you into? I mean, do you write codes? Are you into school? Are you into basketball? Are you a brainiac? What is your thing? Because not everybody throws a football. Not everybody can spell real
Right.
well. So I want to make sure I don't put them in a category. I have people come up that are in bands, 13 years old, to play the drums. Really? And then I say, hey, live it. Be sure you can take care of yourself. And I use the same thing I said earlier about 7-Eleven. I've told my kids, if you want to work there, great. If you're happy and you can support your family, great. So it's really about your dream, what you want to do, not what I do. But I will tell you that there's nothing really impossible if you want. Running casino resorts, I did nothing but deal with numbers, statistics, algorithms, everything with percentage margin. I had $100 million payroll, over a 500 million revenue, $1 billion casino. Brag, 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 right? However, at the end of the day, it was just a number. It had a few extra zeros on it compared to a normal restaurant. Everything was based on ratios, cost associated. And to me, it was just common sense. I mean that. I mean, I
Right.
hired people that were smart too. They had MBAs and bachelor degrees and, CFOs. But at the end of the day, you know what? I knew my numbers. I knew my game. I didn't go to college. But you know what? I'll go up against any CEO or COO in the casino industry today. And I feel very comfortable I can compete, if not do better.
If you were in your office and say Jason Voorhees walked in here with his resume, what are some positive you would be like, man, I really like your like what are some stuff you could positive stuff you could take off Jason that would be successful in the casino industry?
Well, number one, he's had a tough life. He's still standing up tall. And I respect that heavily coming from my own life. Not having a father, I remember people used to say, well, what's that like not having a dad? I don't know. I never had one. I didn't know how to answer the
Oh, well,
question as a
interesting.
kid. And then, of course, when I was younger in school, I used to get a little bit laughed at because I didn't have a father. In my era, it was a little different. Everybody just expected you had a mom and a dad. But that's not life changing either or. It's still what you decide. In my case, I looked at something like the military. It gave me a stabilization. Running these casino resorts, John, I've always used three words with my executives. And I've been to a few colleges and taught some classes for the professors. Even though I didn't have a college degree, I would come in as a guest speaker. And I'd say, I have a college degree. And they go, no, we want you because you have experience in business. I used to tell everybody three things: qualify, quantify, simplify. Think about it. So
Right.
use those three words, qualify. Well, think about it. That's blue sky and what's going to work, what's not going to work. Quantify, qualify. Qualify means you got to put an ROI on it, return on the investment. Does it make sense? And then simplify. Don't make it complicated. If you're the only person in the room that understands the mission, problem is nobody's going to help you get there. You're going to do it all by yourself and you're going to work really hard. Qualify, quantify, simplify.
With your retirement from the that industry, have you picked up any new hobbies or like, what is you mentioned you fell off your horse and stuff like that, but what other stuff do you do to kind of keep sane out here?
You know, when I retired 5 years ago, the main thing I did was I was fortunate. I bought a piece of land. I have a ranch in Montana, so I have horses. You know, I have some alpacas and beehives,
Nice.
and that's me. I go do a convention now and then. I do a film now and then. Um, I enjoy it. You know, like I said earlier, my horses, they're fun. I've got one called Desperado. He's 15.3 hands. He's black and white with blue eyes like a husky.
Wow.
But I'll be honest, the last time I got on him, which was like 4 years ago, he put me into the fence. So I kind of don't get on him anymore because I don't tuck and roll very well. But I've got a Palomino cashmere. I get on her all the time. And my wife has a lady, Sedona, that she has, beautiful red horse. So that's my thing now. You know, I'm fortunate enough that I can do a convention now and then. I can meet fans now and then. Uh, you know, fun thing I did back here in November 10th, 2021 was the 246 years of the Marines, technically on November 11th. But on November 10th, I
Right.
went down to the military post and down outside San Diego and signed autographs complimentary for the Marines. Did selfies and all that different things just to say thank you for their service. So those are the cool things I get to do now. Fun things I get to do, or shop with a cop, go in town and make a donation so they can get some presents for Christmas and stuff. So you heard me say it earlier. You know, play it forward where you can, and I'm able to do a little bit, and I just continue to move forward.
No, it's awesome. And I think it was you just celebrated the 35th anniversary, I believe, of Jason Lives too. It's just, again, it's just crazy that that is still. It just blows my mind. It's so cool that you could still be go to these conventions dressed as your version of Jason and the reception. And it's just so cool that as the world's opening up again now, that fans get the chance to meet you and talk to you. And it's just so you never when you look at someone who looks like they go to a church or a doctor. It's like they're the biggest fans, Jason Voorhees, or it's just so cool that the horror community. You look at someone, you just don't know it could be anyone. And I love the fact that it's just really awesome.
Yeah, you know, like I said, you know, I'm still 6'3", 250. So when I put the wardrobe on, character reference wise is side by side, you wouldn't know the difference. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'd maintained size, structure. Again, when I ran casino resorts, for instance, I always wear a suit and tie. That meant long sleeves, jackets, and nobody knew I had all these tattoos. You know, it was just okay. That's the boss. That's the guy in the suit and tie. Uh, but if they saw me down the street riding a motorcycle, they saw me riding my motorcycle or my chopper with tats, they wouldn't know what to do because occasionally they'd run into me at Gold's Gym and just like, Mr. CJ? I go, no, just CJ. But thank you very much. I didn't know you had all those tattoos. "Yeah, I got a few tattoos. Wow. How did you get that one? And then all of a sudden you're breaking through barriers with your team. And like I said earlier, if you can find something with a young person, a commonality, I don't care if they write codes for computers or if they play basketball or if they can spell really well. That's breaking through each individual. And that person now becomes a different perspective when they look at you because they have something in common with you and they think that's cool. And it makes them feel much more at ease with you when they walk up to you and want to have a conversation.
It's one of those things too. My mom works. She works at a school with lots of special needs kids and with learning disability type things. And one of the kids, it is funny. Last week she just told me about this. One of the kids brought up to her, "Have you seen the movie Lost Boys?" And of course, my mom, like I grew up watching it, and she sang the song, and cried, little sister, and that connection she made with this kid. He's able to listen to her now in classroom, focuses, gets the job done, all because they have that shared mutual connection of the Lost Boys. And it's you laugh at it from the outside, you're like, man, it's so weird. But then what you just said is create that commonality between two people, and look how much more you can get done once you're on the same page like that.
And that's the nice thing about, you know, your mom and I being a little older, we have experiences, life experiences. So there's most people I can have a conversation with. I don't care if you want to talk about motorcycles. I don't care if you want to talk about businesses, making wine, working on a Corvette, working on a Chevy 350. I can talk to you enough about it, putting in the plugs, changing the timing, and have a conversation. People that want to talk about bands, I had a young man, he's 13, plays in a band. He's a drummer. Brought me a picture of him drumming. And the first thing I started saying, have you ever heard of a song called Inagata de Vida? Now it's from 1968. but you got to listen to it. It's the first time a drummer did a 6 or 7 minute solo. Next time he came in a year later, he had went and listened on his phone, of course, to Inagata Devita, and he goes, "Oh man, I've almost got it down to a perfect replica." Well, that was our connectivity outside of just the Jason factor. But when you start talking to them, and again, if you're a veteran, why what are you doing in the military? I have veterans that come up and their friends are overseas, and what I'll always do is throw a quick video, a quick cameo to their buddies and their friends overseas. Obviously tell them take care of themselves, be safe, and get home. But at the same time, make sure to tell them, hey, just remember, Jason's here, and I was a sergeant in the infantry. Don't forget. And they kind of they'll giggle, but they enjoy it because now, hey, did you know Jason's a veteran? And that's their connectivity.
No, I love it. This has been awesome, Jason. And I know you have a website, but if people want to reach out to you, are you on social media? If people want to get, say, a signed picture, or maybe there's a promoter out there that wants to book you for a convention, like, do they all go to your website?
They can just take it to the website. The interesting thing about my website is pretty simple. It's the last page is even a mailing address for people that want to mail me stuff of their own to be signed. And then, of course, you can buy all your pictures and stuff on it. There's a contact website. So people are able to find me reasonably well. These fingerprints are everywhere. So, but like I told you earlier, if they want to reach out, give me a shout. I've got a couple events this year. In fact, this coming week here, I'll be down at an event. I was just at an event last week, and I have the opportunity to just do a few, not too many, because I don't want to wear my welcome out, of course. And then at the same time, I do have responsibilities, and don't laugh, but when we leave this conversation, I'll be putting my cowboy boots on and out there shoveling stables to clean them out because I got 3 horses.
I love it.
Field.
I love it. Well, hopefully you don't get knocked off and you can do that little tuck and roll there and get out of there safely.
Yeah, trust me. I've had them step on my foot a couple times. It's about a 6-month recovery for my foot. They're big.
Oh, so thank you, CJ, for your time. Thank you for this. I wish you all the success, and be safe, and have some fun out there.
Thank you so much. Hey, tell the fans, you guys, I call it the franchise, the legion of Jason fans. I speak for all the Jasons and stuff. Thank you for being fans. We're hoping something comes out soon. We'll see what happens. Everything that from a legality perspective, I understand legally has been settled. And we'll see where Mr. Miller goes with his opportunities to see if we can get one out there for the fans. But thank you, everybody, and I appreciate you.
How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you.